Now, before you say anything, no, this isn't a video that takes any political sides, nor am saying this series is bad in any way. It's honestly the best zombie media we've had in ages, so stick around to the end of the video to actually see my thoughts before you go down in the comment section. This is Zombie Sins, where we point out sins and non-sins of every zombie show, movie, or game. And considering I covered Shaun of the Dead, my favorite movie of all time, both as a perfect movie and as one with sins, it's suffice to say, no zombie media is free of sin. So, let's get into it. Opening up with a panel in 1968 discussing how fungi are way more deadly to humanity's survival than any bacteria, virus, or disease we have ever known. A very ominous tone that gives proper groundwork to the source of the zombie outbreak. Fungi being able to alter our minds irreversibly, giving the most realistic and reasonable cause for a zombie-like individual. Something most zombie media skims over in favor of cutting to the chase and leaving the source of the zombie outbreak up to interpretation. A fantastic beginning with a dark but simple execution. This deserves -1 sin. During Joel, Sarah, and Tommy's breakfast, it's mentioned that they weren't able to eat pancakes while also avoiding the neighbor's biscuits and raisin cookies and not picking up a birthday cake. All of these foods containing wheat and flour, the carrier of the cordyceps brain infection in the story, and good reasoning as to why the main characters aren't among the initial infected at the start of the outbreak and why so many people became infected in a short amount of time. Subtle, yet good reasoning instead of pure plot armor or having just slow zombies somehow take over an entire population. Minus another sin. While in class, Sarah notices classmates slightly twitching and coughing, with symptoms being spasms and coughing, other sly nods to the slowly infecting populace. Minus another sin. This shot of Granny Adler seizing up as her mouth goes agape in the blurred background gave me goosebumps and shows signs of the infection progressing as the geriatric gazes at a healthy host. It might be that the infection hasn't taken over her body completely, that she is able to get up, so maybe that's the reason she wasn't able to bite Sarah. So, minus another sin. Tommy was able to knock out a fully infected person at a bar and get put in jail for it to call Joel to get him out, despite multiple sources on the news saying a string of violent attacks were occurring from the infected people. How did Tommy knock one unconscious without getting infected himself? But also, why did he get locked up and not the infected guy? Lucky for Sarah, while she is outside walking around slowly, that there are no infected running around looking to attack her. While Granny Adler did bite Mr. Adler here and left him alone to bleed, why did Granny Adler bite Mr. Adler here and then just leave him alone to bleed while still eating out Miss Adler? That and Mr. Adler should have turned already, since bites to the neck turn you in about 15 minutes or less. This shot here sealed the deal for me in this version of the cordyceps. When I heard spores weren't going to be a part of the universe, I was skeptical, but seeing the fungal threads snapping from Granny's mouth like that were gross, menacing, and eerily real. The fungus shooting into a body through a bite wound as mycelium tendrils is awesome. Minus another sin. Joel and Tommy drive up just in time to save Sarah escaping the neighbor's house, despite having to drive across Travis County with a heavy amount of traffic to a jail where the infected were most likely concentrated, because that's where a lot of people would probably be taken. Lucky for them that the Adlers all didn't turn and come outside until Joel, Sarah, and Tommy were all safely in their car and driving off, only for a neighbor to finally come outside and be attacked by them. Joel tells Tommy to keep driving and ignore the family stopped on the side of the road. Considering this sporadic pandemic is causing people to turn into monsters via unknown methods to them, it's better safe than sorry to help strangers and risk you and your loved one's health. -1 sin. Living just an hour away from Austin, this much traffic in a little amount of time is realistic. Plus, people will always have the same idea of leaving via the same road, causing congestion and no progress for anyone around. Minus another sin, because that's real. Although I doubt Joel's family would be one of the only trucks or vehicles cutting across the field at this point, people might flock to the same areas of highly congested roads, but when fight or flight kicks in, most are driving away from congested highways and not just sitting there. Joel says the infection is cropping up mostly in cities, So their next course of action is to drive through a city where infected are popping up everywhere? You just off-roaded to get to this city. Why not go around it? You have 3/4 of a tank of gas. This sequence of events of the town spiraling into chaos, movie theaters releasing tons of infected, anarchy, and violence in the streets as Joel's family tries to navigate it was created perfectly. Added the sequence of a plane crash? Icing on the cake, made it way more intense, minus another sin. It wouldn't be a video game related sequence without a main character being knocked unconscious by a destroyed vehicle and then being mostly fine right after. You'd think some of the infected that were running around would have taken the chance to break into this vehicle and nom on some Millers. Another fantastic shot of a horde of infected burrowing their fungi into many convulsing survivors on the ground, minus another sin. Lucky only one of the infected gets up to chase Joel while he carries Sarah. The main objective of the infected are to spread the cordyceps and not to sit there and just eat. And they have pretty much accomplished that with all those people on the ground. So why does only one infected give chase to Joel and Sarah? Wouldn't him getting up and running cause the others to hear this and follow suit? Luckily, Joel was able to evade him long enough to get outside and have a soldier perfectly headshot the one infected right before it was about to attack him. You know, the suckiest part of a pandemic like this is that you don't know who is infected or not, especially in the beginning. And for a father to say his daughter has an unknown injury to her ankle means the soldier is gonna have to follow orders to shoot to kill to limit the spread. He doesn't know what kind of injury it is, and he doesn't know, he just knows bites cause it. As dark as it is, this scene is realistic for what would happen for a realistic zombie outbreak, minus another sin. Tommy was able to headshot the soldier before he could kill Joel. You would think soldiers would be rolling up in 2 or more Hummers or be in squads of 2 or more at this point instead of being by themselves. Sarah slowly passes away from a fatal gunshot wound, showing kids don't get plot armor in a zombie apocalypse, which is a nice change of pace from other zombie media, despite this being the 4th time we have experienced this death. But besides that, minus 1 sin. And as we said at 0 sins, we jump forward 20 years into the outbreak and its effects on the world. I'm not the biggest fan of skimming past the outbreak's beginnings after the initial showcase, but with the cordyceps and its mutative capabilities that keep the infected alive and give them new capabilities, I'm willing to look past it. Minus another sin. We see a boy, ragged and weak, approach a Boston safe haven. The boy is shown to be bitten and infected as he is questioned. The officers comfort him and promise him everything he wants as they lethally inject him, telling him he is safe, only to pan to him being dead later on for his body to be burned. A bitter reality of what is necessary in this new world, minus another sin. The signs of infection being posted everywhere is decent visual storytelling. Regular people would need to be reminded of these symptoms while giving us a window into what the cordyceps infection starts as. I just hope they stick to these rules in the coming episodes, minus another sin. Seeing society functioning with people taking odd jobs in exchange for ration cards while armed guards watch over and civilians being executed merely for entering and leaving quarantine zones to prevent any kind of infection is another bleak but realistic look into post-apocalypse, minus 1 sin. Tess is working out a deal that went wrong and saying she just wants to go home when an explosion kills everyone except her. Why was this specific Hummer blown up, and how was she the only one to survive? A firefight between Fedra and the Fireflies begins while Tess is streetside. Lucky for her, they don't shoot on sight since no other civilians are around. Joel wants to travel all the way to Wyoming to find his brother who has gone MIA with the Fireflies. Boston to Wyoming is over 2,000 miles. Why is Tommy that far away when gas supplies for vehicles would be extremely scarce? And how is this organization this widespread in a zombie apocalyptic United States? You'd think subsections of the country would just be off limits for most, but considering it's The Last of Us, even teenage girls on a vendetta to kill other teenage girls can travel thousands of miles without any issue. Joel is looking to find a car battery to achieve this goal, but even then, wouldn't most gas at this point be left useless? They discuss it later and he's trying to siphon gas, but it still doesn't make sense. A battery and enough gas would be necessary to travel over 2,000 miles. Joel and Tess plan to attack Robert as revenge for roughing Tess up and to procure a battery and truck to go find Tommy. As a video game mission, this sounds fine for fun, but realistically, you're gonna try to gun down a base over a battery, you'd think you'd just try to find something else. They go down in the sewers and see a former infected fused into the wall as a pile of mycelium mush. Tess is freaked out and screams in a very quiet area. You'd think the reaction for them at this point would be kind of, numb to seeing this kind of stuff, not to yell, since half of the infected types that exist in this world rely solely on hearing. Joel states that maybe the dead body was infected while in the sewers. Wouldn't a fungus-related infection tend to be in dark, moist areas like this, since that's where fungi likes to grow? I will say this does look freaking sick, and shows how far the cordyceps will go with the host body once it deems it unusable. -1 sin. They get to the building finally to surprise attack Robert, and find him dead, with the battery they wanted there as soon as they walked in, although it's not working. It's convenient for them, those answers were solved instantly, they didn't have to fight Robert or anything, and they avoided the gunfight that ended in everyone dead. I'm just surprised they didn't hear the gunfire for this many people to be corpses. Now here's a big issue I have with the Fireflies in the game and the TV show. The Fireflies want Ellie since she is immune to the cordyceps, and then task Joel and Tess with smuggling her to the State House to utilize this biological phenomenon within her. If they are trying to find a cure or something, wouldn't they at least bring that info to Fedra through a neutral party like Joel, since Fedra has more resources and tech to do something about this? I understand Fedra and the Fireflies are warring factions, but you'd think the first immune human to the infection that crippled humanity that would crop up would cause some civility or try to make a treaty over something to get a cure made. Yes, Fedra does kill infected on sight, but again, have a messenger detail this discovery to someone in Fedra instead of tiptoeing around Fedra with this 1 in a billion immune individual who, if found randomly sneaking out of quarantine, would just be shot on sight or publicly executed. Try to get that info out, and maybe something better could happen instead of, oh, we're gonna sneak around. Well, there goes the savior of humanity. I realize that all this defeats the plot points, but still, having radio signals for music playing from the 60s, 70s, and 80s to have a code for nothing in, new stock, and trouble is actually neat, both as discrete communication to avoid surveillance from opposing raiders and parties, and for the soundtrack to have diegetic relevance, and for it to not just be random music so they could have a good killer soundtrack. We're gonna take off one more sin. And they get caught. And as Ellie is about to get tested for her cordyceps infection, she stabs the guy and almost gets shot. Without context, of course, someone will see that she is infected and of course freak out. Joel kills the guard, and then Tess sees the positive test result and bite wound on Ellie's arm, and of course, she freaks out. For Ellie to be this savior of humanity, hiding this information even from the people you handed her over to, is kinda dumb. The woman that handed Ellie over to them knows how ruthless and dangerous Tess and Joel can be, so seeing someone with a bite wound 20 years into the apocalypse could cause them to also shoot her on sight without context. I don't think they thought this through. Starting off strong, the Indonesian military brings Professor of Mycology Ibu Ratna to a compound to discuss cordyceps spreading in people from a local flour mill plant. Once she sees a sample and directly dissects a cadaver to see it full of mycelium showing the innards of the body are being eaten and replaced by the fungus, she grows distraught. The revelation, on top of the officials telling her 14 infected people are missing in the city, leading to the professor declaring that there is no cure except to bomb everything and everyone to prevent its spread, was by far my favorite section of this adaptation, hands down. The dread, the realism, the sheer magnitude, and how it gives depth and longevity to the infected, and how dire the future of humanity is fantastic. Instead of following some of the same emotional beats as the game, this entirely new scene felt the most uneasy to me. I'm starting off episode 2 with -5 sins. Ellie awakens to Joel and Tess looking over her, making sure she doesn't turn. Precautions any sane person would make. -1 sin.
If we're out in the open city, why aren't we getting swarmed?
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, kinda should worry about it. It's a valid question. Ellie explains she was tested to make sure she kept her cognitive skills while counting, holding out her hand, and more while chained up. Another decent precaution by the Fireflies, considering they've been dealing with the infected for 20 years. Any kind of turn time could happen at this point, -1 sin.
They're working on a cure.
I've heard this before.
And whatever happened to me is
It's the key to finding the vaccine. That's what this is.
You know, Joe is a realist. 20 years in, I'm sure the story of finding a cure and vaccine has been uttered countless times. And the fact that both a top mycologist and numerous professors have said it's impossible to even make any kind of a vaccine or cure, I doubt doctors for the Fireflies and whatever compound they're in would not be able to produce something that could wipe out the cordyceps. But hey, keep hope alive. -1 sin for Joel for being real.
If she so much as twitches.
Whoa. I get you're a teenager and like to screw with people. I still do that as a fully grown 30-year-old man. But why in the good God hell would you do this to a guy that said he would shoot you just moments ago at the first sign of infection? They have 2 routes to take to get to the State House. Joel suggests taking a high vantage point to scout the area for infected to determine where to go. That's pretty smart, -1 sin.
So there aren't super infected that explode fungus spores on you?
Yeah, if you played the games.
Or ones with split open heads that stay in the dark like bats?
Probably should inform the girl that yes, that there are indeed those kinds of infected, and that if one appears, you shouldn't make any kind of sound since they rely on echolocation to find and kill you. But nah, let's act like we are concealing the reality of Santa Claus away from her. She's too young to understand a clicker, apparently. I understand she is a curious girl, but you'd probably want to be limiting as much noise as possible in dark and wet areas like this, since that's typically where fungus likes to grow. They see some of the roof of this building has caved in since the last time they were there, preventing them from moving up easily. You would think even entering these towering buildings 20 years in with them crumbling at random and fungus burrowing into the walls, that it would be discouraged from even entering these buildings at this point.
Where are you from?
Texas,
What about Tess?
Detroit, it's in Michigan.
I go to school. I know where Detroit is.
I'm surprised they still teach the 50 states and locations to kids at this point. You'd think quarantine camps that prevent leaving wouldn't be too keen on teaching all the major cities and would have focused more on something important like survival skills like farming, hunting, engineering, woodwork, and so on.
How long do infected live?
Oh, I thought you went to school.
It's a really shitty one.
Well, shit. I guess mostly useless information is standard for most public school systems, even in the zombie apocalypse. This shot of the piles of infected huddled together as hints of a hive mind intelligence that hunts at the slightest signal of even the fungus being stepped on from up to a mile away gives a lot of context clues to the cordyceps and what it's capable of while showing the infected in their natural state. -1 sin. They now have to find a different way to the State House and decide to cut through the museum while the outside looks like this. Joel says the overgrown fungi outside is dry and dead and would not be able to relay information, but why would you enter this building whatsoever? Seems like the perfect place for infected to hide away in, on account of all the fungus that's growing on the walls and floor. They find the fresh corpse of a healthy survivor and note specific bloody markings to that of an attack by a clicker. So instead of walking back outside to avoid confrontation and just going around the building or telling Ellie what the threat is, they keep whispering out loud and just continue forward. They just stated stepping on the fungi can alert every infected in a 1-mile area. While most of this fungi looks dead, why risk it in alerting all those infected you just saw outside and keep going upstairs in this museum where all of this fungus has festered over even more? I will say the set design for this show and how a body is utilized long after death to grow these fungi is great and gives the cordyceps a long-standing threat. -1 sin. The roof of this particular part of the building caves in the second they get past it after 20 years of being in a zombie apocalypse, just in time to avoid them being flattened, but not enough to make sound for the clickers to come into this room. Now that 2 clickers are roaming about, Joel figures now is the proper time to tell Ellie to not make noise through hand gestures and mouth movements. The teenage girl, who has never seen or heard of clickers besides brief mentions, breathes heavily near a clicker and alerts it. You could have avoided this situation if you had just given her the way to know and prepare for such a threat that was a part of this survivalist plan. Why wouldn't the second clicker also attack Joel, since he is making a majority of the loud noise in this situation? Joel smashes a case earlier to draw the clicker's attention away. You know, why not throw something in a different direction like a brick or a bottle so you can draw it away? All it takes is a little noise in the opposite direction and you're fine. Joel and Ellie somehow don't get bit here. The coordinated effort to take down both clickers was executed well by them both. -1 sin. Oh, Ellie did get bit here.
Well, that shut me up.
I'm so used to having to say that they didn't get bit. Let's take a bite out of another sin. The fireflies at the state house are all dead from one becoming infected and a firefight ensuing off screen with everyone becoming infected or shooting each other. I'm surprised Joel does not double check all of these bodies to make sure none of them are pretending or that they are slowly turning, and Joel should really double tap them just to be safe. Tess reveals that she was hiding a bite on her neck. Isn't the turn time 15 minutes or less when you're bitten on the neck though? They had the skirmish, the talk on the roof, the climb down from the building, the walk to the state house, and the time inside, and she is displaying no symptoms of the cordyceps brain infection at this point. As Tess asks Joel to take Ellie to safety as her last will to atone for their sins, one of the bodies suddenly springs to life as an infected. You really should have double tapped, Joel. I don't know why this infected was pretending to be dead. Don't they usually kind of convulse or do any kind of body language to signify that they are infected? Now this is really cool. The death of this particular infected causes the fungi below to wrap into the body to relay cognitive signals to the horde we saw earlier to alert them to Joel and his group's location. This dynamic of drawing the zombie threat's attention is A1 and a neat divergence from the games. -1 sin. Lucky for Tess that there are tons of barrels of flammable liquid nearby that were not shot in the previous gunfight, so Tess can set up her own sacrifice. Joel says they have maybe about a minute before the horde gets there, and for once the characters don't meander and actually escape in less than a minute. Good on Joel for sticking to his survival guns and honoring Tess for doing so and actually leaving in less than a minute. -1 sin. Tess struggles to light up as the horde runs by. Some of them take notice but only slowly approach her. Maybe they possibly detect that she is already infected, and then this guy proceeds to, instead of fairly attacking her in a rabies-like fashion like every other infected before and after her in this series, this infected instead slowly locks lips with her to speed up the infection to have the mycelium enter her mouth. Symbolism aside with the kiss of death, it still didn't make sense for this to happen, especially for her to just sit there and just take it. Wouldn't she at least back up? I mean, yeah, I know you're about to die, but girl, unless you're into tentacle stuff, I don't get it. Tess is able to light up and blow up the entire horde in the building, even though many of them had already long since ran way past her without noticing her. Can you imagine if the lighter didn't work and she just turned into a zombie and ran outside with the horde instead? Joel stacks rocks as a memorial to Tess, and Ellie says to not blame her for Tess's death. the two getting a hold of their own feelings and hashing things out so emotions don't get in the way of future endeavors, -1 sin. Seeing as how Tess is dead, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to at least teach Ellie how to use a gun and have one on her just in case. You never know what could happen in the world, and having an extra hand with a gun that's immune to bites wouldn't hurt. Joel starts looking for a stash he stowed away years ago, without checking the perimeter for infected or scavengers first, and letting Ellie go off on her own without protection. Ellie discovers a hatch and climbs down. She finds an infected man pinned under mounds of cinder blocks and debris. I'm surprised it hasn't started decomposing to set up mycelium to relay information to other infected, or that it's acting so docile at all as it allows her to cut into its forehead to reveal the white strands inside. Now, I will admit the tidbit of the innards of a zombie being replaced by mycelium is still cool as hell. -1 sin. The writers had whiny asshats like me in mind when Ellie asks how the hell the world has been taken over by zombies in one day, when the infection spread through bites, while Joel explains it was through wheat products. I appreciate them being forward with this information and answering these questions directly so people like me can shut the hell up about how zombies took over. -1 sin. They come across the remains of dozens of people as Joel explains people were executed if quarantine zones were too full. A tragic outcome in an extreme pandemic to prevent further infections and outbreaks. -1 sin. Jumping into the past, we see Bill spectating Fedra evacuating the public through his surveillance system. Bill avoids it while going up armed and masked. Everything about Bill's setup of a huge safe haven with power generators, booby traps, farms, and procurement of further supplies is exactly how to survive a zombie apocalypse, and is how everyone thinks they will be doing their own survival of a zombie apocalypse, even though my Why You Wouldn't Survive series says otherwise. -1 sin for Bill's doomsday prepping ingenuity. Zombies can't even approach his camp without being blasted in the head while he eats a steak dinner. Holy hell, what a Chad! Dig in and out, another sin. Speaking of digging, Bill finds a man has stumbled into a pit trap of his. He tests Frank for infection and then brings him inside to shower and eat. I'm surprised there hasn't been any other people at this point. Bill and Frank cross swords, and we jump 3 years into the future to them arguing as a couple. Frank wants paint to freshen up a store and gas for a lawnmower. Bill doesn't want to waste resources on making stuff look nice. You know, I gotta agree with Bill. A non-trimmed yard doesn't mandate wasting gasoline, the very fuel you need to power everything here. Also, I'm surprised they have lived peacefully there for 4 years as only 2 people. 4 years later, and they are having double dates peacefully and discussing trading with Joel and Tess. Joel says raiders will eventually attack the camp for supplies. Again, I'm surprised at a world where anarchy took over just 1 day into an apocalypse that Bill's camp was never attacked or any mention of an attack has ever happened. 3 years later, a random group of raiders approaches the camp and one of them gets set on fire via a flamethrower. Lucky for Frank, he didn't meet the same fate and fall into that trap. This group approaches the camp like it's heavily fortified with tons of people as if they've been scouting it for ages. But it's also apparently their first time here since they fell for the traps set by one man. How is it the first time anything like this has happened 7 years into a zombie apocalypse? There would have been a lot more people finding this place and trying to take it over. Okay, here is my biggest issue with the episode. There might be a lot of controversy around episode 3, but here Bill is this hardcore survivalist who has set elaborate traps to kill anything that approaches his safe haven with dozens of guns at his disposal and how to use them. He knows how to defend himself in every situation. Yet, when a full-scale firefight ensues against multiple hostile individuals, he goes not only outside from his home with a sniper rifle, but also out in the middle of the street without any cover with it. In what situation would you go out in the middle of the open with a sniper rifle when you could easily go to a window, your rooftop, or anything else to have a better bird's eye view with decent cover. Some can argue nearly a decade of living with Frank has softened him up and loosened his survivalist capabilities. But I mean, he was already outside gunning before Frank even woke up. Bill obviously has that instinct about him to survive and fight still, just not enough to be sensible in a gunfight. Bill looks away and gets shot while Frank brings him back in. I'm surprised neither of them got shot while they limped away. You're telling me that entire group of people died to the flames or ran away, and the 10 years following, no one else came seeking revenge, supplies, or more? I know a lot of people would be like, yo, this place is fortified with automatic traps. We need the hookup. Let's take this place over. 20 years in, and Bill is still able to keep electricity running on gasoline that is mostly water by now, and is able to look after Frank in his severely weakened and sickened state like it's a retirement home. Bill decides to kill himself along with Frank so they can go peacefully together before Frank dies of his affliction. Their love story was gripping and showed the human elements of a hardened survivalist opening up.
Until Bill and Frank could only have this romance and even the idea of a marriage because of a zombie apocalypse that started in 2003.
I will minus 1 sin for this tragic love story, but I also still wonder how they managed to have a love story like this over the course of 20 years with only one raider attack over the course of all that time. Bill and Frank have been dead long enough for the food to mold over, yet the powered fence is still running. Bill left a note saying he's leaving all of his supplies to Joel and that he needs to find someone to protect in this world, showing that Bill's love for Frank was an indirect way for Joel to learn to protect those that he finds with everything that he's got. A narrative bridge to push Joel forward, minus 1 sin. Joel finally gets his truck and battery so he can find Tommy and get Ellie to their destination with the Fireflies. But I can't help but think what a waste like this safe haven is going to. Still running electricity, traps, weapons, livestock, food, security, and even hot water. Everything you need. What a shame. Ellie tells Joel they should bring some guns and even let her have one, and he says no. Why the hell not, dude? Bill leaving pistols all around the house for Ellie to find makes sense, since you never know when someone or something could attack at any moment, even though that only happened once for this whole community. Still, minus 1 sin. We get another instance here of the writers addressing criticism from people like me when Joel says they need to siphon gas every hour since gasoline at this point is mostly water. But even then, I think gasoline would not be usable at all after 20 years. Gas tends to oxidize and go bad after just a year, with certain compounds needed for combustion evaporated. That and gas being mostly water like he said would mean it couldn't cause the combustion needed to get the car running. So even though they address this, it still is nowhere near realistic. They drive out in the middle of the woods and start eating. Ellie eats a 20-year-old can of Chef Boyardee. Some people like me may argue that it would be inedible, but non-perishable food, if stored properly, can last that long. And since it was stored at Bill's where nothing ever went wrong, it's safe to eat from a can stored there. So, minus 1 sin. Joel says they can't start a fire as the smoke would attract other people, something they want to avoid. Good on you, Joel, minus 1 sin. They start going to bed and Ellie asks if anyone will find them while they sleep. A reasonable question that has Joel standing guard all night. Having everyone asleep would leave them easy pickings, so Joel is doing right, even if he's gonna be super tired by the morning, minus another sin. Joel says he went to Boston with Tommy, who then joined the Fireflies to save humanity, but grew disillusioned and went off on his own. And this is why Joel is trying to find Tommy across the country in a zombie apocalypse. Ellie responds with,
If you don't think there's hope for the world, why bother going on? I mean, you gotta try, right?
as Joel says she is too young and innocent to understand reality, but family is the reason to go on. A touching and kind of mostly reasonable reason for a man of conviction like him to do what he does, minus one sin. They arrive in Kansas City shortly after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and see the roads are blocked off by vehicles. They already drove 1,400 miles without any issues, also while having to get a new tank of gas every hour. Not only that, but after Joel specifically stated that you do not want to draw attention of other people, he decides drive through a major American city where not only do infected tend to congregate, but where people in Fedra tend to be held up too. You know, groups of people that would kill Ellie and her bite mark on sight. Why risk driving through a city anyways? You drove 1,400 miles already. You obviously know how to get that far with what you have. Just go around this major city. You've got a map to figure this stuff out. They notice Fedra is gone and the QZ is barren when a man pretending to be injured comes out asking for help. Joel looks past this facade and tries to run him over when others attack the car. Joel knew better that they were setting up an ambush, but not enough to avoid this city entirely. The raiders start laying suppressing fire on Joel and yelling that if they hand over their supplies, they'll come out alive, and then start shooting wildly 3 seconds after. If you're gonna lie, at least be convincing about it. Joel is able to kill one of them, and the other raiders gets mad and instead of shooting at Joel, comes out from behind protection to go check on his friend out in the open. Really? Lucky for him, Joel was sneaking away, or else that would have been another easy kill for Joel. Joel takes out another raider, only for one to break through the back door and overpower him. Ellie sneaks up to him and pops him in the back. Good on Ellie for snagging that gun. -1 sin. The last guy begs for his life, saying he was sorry and that he won't do anything more to hurt them, even though he was saying Joel would pay for killing his friends despite them attacking first. The duality of man when he is powerless. Joel kills him after telling Ellie not to look. You can't risk him telling others info on them or more. -1 sin. We cut to Kathleen, the leader of the resistance that overthrew Fedra, interrogating a doctor on the whereabouts of a man named Henry. She goes out and sees the 3 men Joel killed, and they get mad and think Joel is a mercenary hired by Henry, leaving Kathleen to shoot the doctor. Okay, 2 things here. You have men posted in the city to attack people that enter, no matter who the person is. So don't act surprised if some of your people die while ambushing other people that enter. And another thing, why kill your only doctor? Medical knowledge is kind of critically necessary at this point, isn't it? I get she is on a warpath and is irrational, but still. Kathleen wants every person who have collaborated with Fedra before they rebelled to be executed, causing everyone to raid every building in town searching for Sam and Henry. Kathleen's anger and fear driving the masses is realistic in its point of fear causing rationality and safety to be tossed to the wind in a post-apocalyptic world, minus another sin. Joel talks with Ellie about having to harm and kill others in self-defense. Basically, a father having to have the talk with their child about something everyone goes through in life. But now, instead of the birds and the bees, it's murder in the second degrees. Joel feels sorry she had to shoot someone at her age, but finally admits she needs a gun in this world, -1 sin. While searching for Henry, Kathleen discovers a giant cracked piece of concrete bubbling up like something is big underneath the earth. Instead of addressing what is most likely infected underground from coming up, Kathleen decides to keep this under wraps until her revenge mission is complete. Girl, I get it, killed the bad guys, unga boonga, but holy hell, you just saw concrete move around like a pregnant woman's belly. You might want to nip this problem in the bud before it pops out. Lucky for them, they are able to enter this building without any interference. Joel admits he knew it was an ambush because he, Tess, and Tommy did the same shit back in the day, meaning Joel killed innocents back then to get by. As we all act like we are champions of morality, years into a zombie apocalypse would have you making decisions you would regret just to stay alive. -1 sin. Joel picks a floor to camp out on and breaks some glass to scatter on the ground. That way, if anyone enters, they would be able to hear them ahead of time. Clever, -1 sin. Although you should probably barricade the only door to the room while you're asleep to prevent anyone from entering, just to be extra safe. And would you looky here, people snuck in.
We cut back to the rebels taking down Kansas City Fedra, shooting, torturing, and hanging the federal agents and their collaborators. A guy on a megaphone announces if any collaborators come out of hiding, they will be given a fair trial, while dragging a soldier filled with screwdrivers in his body. If you're gonna lie, be convincing about it. Kathleen interrogates all those known for collaborating with Fedra, asking if they did it for medicine and food, calling them traitors. Well, of course they did it for all that stuff. She prods them for info on Henry's whereabouts, and when one gives up the info, she orders them all executed anyways. You know, in the chaos of the riots and whatnot that just happened, who's to say Sam and Henry didn't just leave the city altogether? The doctor sets Sam and Henry up in an attic with food and water to hide out for 11 days. In that time, Henry studies the patterns of the rebels' search parties to find the best time to escape. Good looking out for the future self, -1 sin. Lucky for him, the hour he decides to start going on the move is the same time Joel rolls up into town. Convenient. Joel's plan of broken glass making noise to wake them up was thwarted by a deaf 8-year-old. Joel and Henry are up high discussing their next course of action and what led to the rebellion in Kansas City. Joel says he heard that the Fedra here was full of rapists, torturers, and more. So you knew about this and still thought it was a good idea to go through Kansas City? Why? Henry admits to being a collaborator that worked with this branch of Fedra, basically what Joel had deemed a rat. Henry knows the city inside and out, so Joel reluctantly agrees to work with him. Fair enough, since he knows the exact parameters of Kathleen's area, and since he is a wanted man with a kid brother, I really don't see him ratting on Joel and Elliot at this point, -1 sin. Henry suggests they take maintenance tunnels underground. Joel asks him why he is needed if it's so easy to go underground in the first place, and Henry admits that there are probably just a few infected here and there because Fedra drove them underground 15 years ago. So you think it's a good idea to go down there with just a few pistols? Henry says Fedra killed off all of the infected there 3 years ago, purely based on hearsay, not filling anyone with confidence when you admit an entire infected population was driven underground with the fact that allowing them to flourish in a dark and wet area would allow mycelium networks to establish, as well as mutated forms of the infected to sporadically grow. You're giving them an area to become stronger than they need be. You're going somewhere where the infected will be stronger and more unkillable and can know where you are if you step on the wrong thing. They enter the bank building to go underground, and Henry yells,
"See? It's empty. The plan is good."
Despite knowing what a clicker is, he just told
One
Ellie,
of those blind ones that sees like a bat?
Wait, you ran into a clicker,
2 of them.
and you're still alive.
but here he is yelling in a giant echoing tunnel system like they won't be able to find him that way? Really, dude? They stumble on an abandoned underground school showing what some people had to resort to survive, and also giving Sam and Ellie time to just be kids. A heartwarming sentiment and look at what was lost over the last 20 years and what can still be found. -1 sin. They decide to wait here till nightfall so they can move in the shadows. Good thinking, -1 sin. Henry admits he turned in Kathleen's brother to Fedra so he could get medicine for his brother sick with leukemia. An extremely difficult judgment of morality and case study into what people will have to do when society crumbles. -another sin. The resistance is still searching every corner of the city while Kathleen discusses her dead brother and how he would always seek out peace when he was alive, but admits she is the exact opposite of him and will not stop her vengeful crusade. Despite risking many people's lives against an entity they don't know anything about and the lingering threat of the infected below, those that follow her see her as someone who gets results and blindly follow her. Another look into what people will do once they attain leadership and what they will do as they seek justice in an unjust world. Everyone is afraid and they will seek answers in any way they can. -1 sin. The group gets topside and is walking down the middle of a street. Henry is annoyed Joel doesn't want them using flashlights in the middle of the dark, and he starts talking out loud. So much for sticking to the shadows like you originally said, and why risk being out in the open and walking in the middle of the street when you're almost in the clear? It's just a neighborhood over. You know, man, it's better safe than sorry, especially with an entire army still on a manhunt specifically for everyone in your group. And they start getting shot at. Henry tries running away out in the open with his deaf brother that he has risked everything for and almost gets the both of them shot. Joel starts maneuvering his way to the gunman in the house down the street. Lucky for him, the guy the Resistance has posted up here is such a shit sniper. Joel sneaks his way up to the gunman and tries to goad him not to attack, but reluctantly has to kill him since he lunges for him. -1 sin. Kathleen's armada starts rolling up and plowing through the road. And if you see this coming your way, what would you do in that situation? Well, instead of running to the sides at all through the houses and alleys, they keep running in a straight line down the street. They are somehow also able to outrun this car for a while. Joel is able to perfectly headshot the truck driver at the last possible moment so it veers into a house and bursts into flames. The ensuing explosion draws the attention of everyone there. Instead of taking that time to make some distance and get away, Ellie, Sam, and Henry stare at it and just hide nearby. How much ammo did that old fart have up there? Joel is using so much. Kathleen says that Sam was supposed to die and asks Henry if he thinks the whole world revolves around one kid, something Joel will take to heart later on. Kathleen, who has been on this manhunt for 10 straight days, doesn't order the squad to rush the guy that they've been trying to kill and waits for him to come out instead, potentially allowing him to come out guns blazing. If you're going to be maniacally on a journey of vengeance, you would think you would not villain monologue at this point right before your goal. Before she can pull the trigger on him, the truck descends into the earth as the howls of infected can be heard. Lucky for Henry, the infected have plot convenient timing to get up and out. This sequence right here made this my favorite episode of the series by far. One of the best zombie horde scenes I have ever seen. A horde of clickers rise from below as a problem that was pushed to the side for too long and attack and cause chaos with everyone fighting back. Everything following is just so intense and well done. I'm going to strike off 3 sins just purely for how incredibly awesome this sequence of events are. Joel is able to cleanly shoot anything that approaches Ellie and keeps a steady supply of ammunition and a bolt-action rifle while doing so with barely any hiccups. The entrance of the bloater into the series was masterfully executed, thundering forth from the horde to decimate 2 soldiers with ease. It makes sense a place like this is where we see our first bloater, considering Henry did say they forced the infected underground 15 years ago, and in the canon of the video games, it does take up to about 15 years for an infected to evolve into a bloater, and especially since they've been underground in a dark and wet environment. It all makes sense for once instead of just hamming it up. -1 sin. The bloater killing Tommy's voice actor here with a 1-to-1 kill animation from the game is just what the doctor ordered. It's brutal, yet satisfying. Let's rip off another sin. While I'm happy to see a clicker junior, how did this underaged, blind infected know exactly where Ellie went? Don't they rely on hearing to find people? Wouldn't it be kind of hard to hear Ellie climb into a door when everyone else is screaming and shooting? Ellie is about to be swarmed by 3 infected, and an SUV splats all of them in an instant without touching her. Deus Ex Zombina. Sam and Henry are pinned under a car being attacked by clickers, so Ellie runs over, pulls the clicker up, and stabs both of them in the neck, and she's able to insta-kill one of them. It's funny that a teenage girl was able to not only pull one of them off of a ravenous attack, but was able to one-shot one of the clickers with a knife purely to the neck, when before, Joel, with a high-powered rifle, and Tess, with a fire axe, both could not kill them with blows directly to the head. Kathleen stops them at gunpoint despite all the chaos and just sits there staring. She sacrificed everything for her revenge, and she won't even pull the trigger now? And with hordes of infected still behind her killing everyone and potentially getting her? It's lucky that Joel never killed the Clicker Jr. from earlier, so it can karmically kill Kathleen after her comments about children dying all the time. I know this is to symbolize how she ignores the bigger problems for her own vendetta, and also why kids dying doesn't really matter, which ultimately costs her everything, but damn girl, if you're gonna do it, don't be stupid. stupid about it, well, at least she can join Charlie Harper in hell now. Although I'm sad this horde scene is over and people are being slaughtered right in front of our eyes, you can't deny how great that view is. -1 sin. They get to a hotel for the night and Joel agrees to team up with Sam and Henry from here on out. Sam speaks with Ellie saying he is scared of becoming a monster and if the person he is will forever be gone inside. He then reveals he was bitten during the ambush. Ellie desperately tries to save him by bleeding on his wound, thinking her blood is medicine. An exchange of children trying to face the harsh realities of the world they were born into, and how ultimately it all ends up. Beautiful, yet tragic. -1 sin. Now I know Ellie believes in some way that she cured Sam, but it would probably have been safer to inform one of the adults of his bite so better precautions could have been taken. Sam turns while looking out the window, unmoving until Ellie nudges him. You would think an infected would start looking around for victims the second they turned. You know, despite this basically being note for note from the game, it doesn't make a brother having to kill his infected brother instinctively and then turning the gun on himself after everything he did to protect him any easier. This will easily be the most tragic occurrence in the franchise for me, and it was still executed well enough to pull at my heartstrings. People in the apocalypse will not be able to come to terms with what they have to do, and this is another harsh slice of reality. -1 sin. 3 months later, Joel prods this old mountain couple in the snowy forest for information on the area. These two are just precious, and them living out here since before the world went to hell makes sense for their survival. -1 sin for Mountain Mama. Mountain Mama. Good to see Joel avoiding cities ever since the Kansas City fiasco. The old man says anywhere there used to be people like cities is swarmed with infected, even in these harsh winters. A good thing to remember since 0 infected will pop up in this episode. I wonder if Ben Shapiro will make a comment about that here.
Here's the problem with Brokeback Zombie Farm. 1, it's a zombie show. There are no zombies in this entire episode. Like none. I understand simplistic critique, but there are no zombies in a zombie show.
Either way, -1 sin. They say the area west of the river is death, and Joel starts to worry immensely for Ellie's safety after traveling with her for so long. For Joel, everyone else they encountered thus far has died, so the toll of the journey is notably something a lot of people would start to feel, minus another sin. Ellie yoinks a dead rabbit from the couple for them to eat later. While not morally right, considering everything, meat for eating later is nice to have, -1 sin. Ellie and Joel have deep conversations about their futures after they arrive at their destination. You would think Ellie, who non-stop talks about everything, would have discussed this already. Joel falls asleep during night watch and Ellie takes over so he can get some rest, proving she can do what needs to be done, minus another sin. At first, I wondered why Joel fired a live round at nothing here, but realized he was attempting to make enough noise to draw out any infected or people in case they were in hiding or camouflaged by the white foliage. Smart, minus another sin. We see a still working dam here that provides the electricity for the settlement we will see here soon, minus another sin. A group of gunmen on horseback surround them and have a dog come out to sniff them for signs of infection. I never thought of that as a thing. A smart way of screening strangers. -1 sin. Lucky for Joel, the people that surround him and hold them at gunpoint are actually associated with his long-lost brother and bring them to Tommy. Good thing, in 3 months, nothing bad happened until this point. They explain this settlement was established and built upon for the last 7 years, setting up electricity, plumbing, hot water farms, and crops. A decent way of living far away from any established cities where infected flourish. We're gonna take off another sin. I do have to wonder though, the old couple from earlier has lived in their cabin for over 20 years. This settlement has been around for 7. Wouldn't people from the settlement have already run into them or established contact with this couple in some form or fashion in that time while out hunting or patrolling, instead of the couple being ominous and saying there's nothing but death past that river? Tommy's wife says they stay off the radar but not posting about this place anywhere and staying off the radio. Hence why Joel
Joel lost communication with him. While it is a dick move suddenly to leave your brother hanging across the country 20 years into a zombie apocalypse after everything you've been through, it's honestly smart not to broadcast the whereabouts of a decent safe haven like this, since people would tap in and plot raids. I still think Tommy could have at least said something saying he is safe but can't divulge information on where they're at. But regardless, minus another sin. Apparently, there is an empty house they say hasn't been touched in 20 years that Joel and Ellie can stay in. With that many people staying there in this settlement, I'm surprised no one there said,
It's free. Real estate.
We're giving you land.
It's free.
We're giving you a house.
It's real estate. Free.
It's a free house for you, Joel.
This is free real estate.
It's a free house.
It's free real estate.
Joel asked Tommy how hard it would be to get to the University of Eastern Colorado Firefly Base, being a week's ride south, full of infected and raiders. I do have to wonder though, aren't infected only centralized within major cities? Why is that specific stretch full of infected? Joel pressures Tommy to join him in bringing Ellie to the base after not seeing each other for ages, since he told Tommy he will be handsomely rewarded. But even with Tommy saying he was a kid on the way, why would he go? They have a perfect setup with the township. No amount of pay from anarchists would beat what Tommy has been living in for ages now with the kid on the way. Joel sees a woman that looks like the adult version of his daughter picking up her own child as he sits back and wonders what things could have been like if he just could have saved Sarah. A short, somber moment that drives home how much Joel is stricken with grief and his fear of failure. Minus another sin. I never knew this existed, but Ellie is given a Diva cup for menstruation, and it's rewashable and reusable, something much more preferable in a zombie apocalypse over tampons found in the wild. On top of hygiene, you really don't want to risk a fungus on your insertables. Minus another sin. Ellie is told about Joel's dead daughter and comes to understand his hesitance. With that withheld info, Maria says there's a lot about Ellie not divulged, and that is for good reason, since, especially with the zombie post-apocalypse, you really have to be careful who you trust, as you cannot be betrayed unless you put faith in someone else. Something like that can cost you everything, and what we must understand about other people in humanity's darkest days. Minus another sin. I hate this kid's face. Joel admits to Tommy that Ellie is immune to the cordyceps and that he feels too weak to protect this hope, but also that she is Tess's last wish, professing how he had to have a 14-year-old girl save him because he was too slow and too deaf. A part of him regretful about failing and losing everyone he couldn't save, and fearing it will happen all over again with his new surrogate daughter Ellie. A character study about loss, being a father, and also how they are amplified by the harsh conditions of the cordyceps world. Even the toughest, battle-hardened people will break down amongst all this pressure. That is reality, minus another sin. Despite their confrontation, Joel doesn't separate from Ellie, and they go off on their way with Tommy handing them his rifle. Soon after, they do target practice with live ammo. I know Ellie needs to know how to fire it just in case, and it's good to practice, but shouldn't you be conserving this ammo for your big journey and just done this practice while you were still at the camp so you can just restock? They arrive at the University Firefly Base and there's no signs of life. Luckily, there are packing lists, maps, and manuscripts left behind to show where the Fireflies all went. You know, it's weird because leaving a paper trail of all your strongholds when you are still in the middle of waging war against a government entity, that's surely something you're gonna want to do frequently, I guess. Why leave all this stuff behind just so you can be found out? Monkeys from the local research facility at the campus that escaped 20 years ago stayed here for those 2 decades. Some raiders show up outside, prompting Joel and Ellie to get back to their horse. Both of them stare at it while they unharness it instead of one of them standing guard. You have guns, and from what you could see, they only have melee weapons. You will be able to get them before they can get you. And they are surprise attacked by one raider, and Joel is able to snap his neck. Why did this one raider split up from his group anyways when they were already grouped up before? Ellie sees Joel was stabbed by a large chunk of broken bat. They stare at each other in shock, but not long enough for the other 3 raiders to run up and barely miss catching up to them just in time for the horse to run off into the sunset. Bonus brownie points for Joel snapping a guy's neck like in the games. -1 sin. Joel isn't invincible with plot armor and passes out from blood loss after getting away. He's not going to be able to use a makeshift med kit on that. He's only human after all. Minus another sin. Ellie used a sleeping bag to drag Joel's unconscious body via horse to a nearby neighborhood to attempt to save him. Quick and efficient thinking on her part. -1 sin. Joel tells Ellie to go to Tommy up north where it's safe. With the situation that they're currently in, it's noble for him to point her in the direction of a safe place, even if it draws a tear from his seizing body. Minus another sin. We get Ellie's flashback to her time at Fedra, with her being scolded for infighting with the counselor telling her she can either be a guard with free housing and food, or be stuck working the jobs nobody wants. A window into this reality of how things are after society crumbles and tries to rebuild. Minus another sin. Riley, after being gone for 3 weeks without a trace, sneaks back into her and Ellie's room while she is asleep during lights out hours. Instead of nudging her awake, she puts her hand forcefully over her mouth and tries to pin her down. What in the name of all that is Danny does she think she is doing? Yeah, funny teenager edginess, I get it, but shit, girl, what if she screamed and got Fedra agents in there to haul you away? I mean, they would have come in, asked why you're screaming, oh, she's back, let's pull her away. What if you got shanked by her because that's just the natural response to somebody pinning you down, or any number of things? It was really dumb here. Riley is here for a specific reason tonight, so pulling something like this definitely jeopardizes that mission of hers. +2 sins. Riley says she has joined the Fireflies, the enemy of Fedra, so again, why go in like this if that's the case? They sneak out and cut through abandoned buildings next door. I'm surprised buildings this close by are still barren and not occupied or defended 20 years in. They find a dead body in the hall and just go up to it. Riley says it's fresh because it wasn't there the last time she came through there. They didn't ascertain he died via until after fiddling around with his body. You are taking an awfully big risk here with someone you have no idea on how they died, considering you know the whole cordyceps thing. They swipe a bottle of prime liquor off the body and then the floor gives out from under it and only there. Kind of a cheap jump scare that makes no sense since the body has been resting there for a bit and it's just weird the floor gives out now. They start drinking from the bottle of liquor. I don't know if I would drink from an open bottle that's been out in the elements when a fungus that can grow just about seemingly anywhere is out there. They jump rooftop to rooftop, dying light style, to get to the mall.
A mall. How original.
While risky, not bad to get some experience in just in case. Minus another sin. They get to the mall and Riley is able to power the entire building from one room. How does a mall still have completely functioning electricity for all its lights close to 2 decades in with no maintenance? I don't think any Fireflies have been using this place to its full capacity in that time. And the escalators are all fully working. Hell, the escalators at every mall I go to are always half working and, or in the famous words of Mitch Hedberg,
escalator temporarily stairs.
I do really appreciate how Ellie gets to experience this glimpse of what was once normal with someone she has feelings for. Just a light in the middle of the world's endless darkness. Despite me bitching about electricity, it's cool to see kids born in the zombie world get to experience what once was. Minus another sin. Arcade cabinets are definitely prone to stop working easily. I see new ones break after a few months at a few barcades I go to, let alone function after nearly 20 years. This infected plastered to the wall suddenly awakens due to the sounds of the arcade machines. Wouldn't it have awoken to all the lights coming on since the infected kind of react to lights? Or maybe the carousel running and all the noise that made, or anything else? Maybe this guy thought gamers were satanic before he's infected and that was his trigger. And with it so infused into the wall, you would think that it would relay the information of survivor whereabouts to other infected through the heavy mycelium it has released on the surface. It's near the end of the season, and we have barely explored the whole tendril into the ground thing to relay information to other infected that was shown in episode 2. The infected awakens. but gives the both of them time to chill and play Mortal Kombat 2 loudly. What a cool guy. Ellie confronts Riley about the pipe bombs in her sleeping area, and she says she is leaving tomorrow to migrate with the Fireflies, with Riley barely even flinching about having explosives to kill the very people that Ellie is with. The fact that both are casually talking about their sides, Fedra and the Fireflies, as warring factions, and then being okay with it shows how children born into war and a zombie apocalypse can still grasp how absurd all of it is and how numb you can become to it all. Minus another sin. Ellie walks back and hears screaming, only to find it was a Halloween prop and an attraction Riley wanted her to see. Good thing the infected didn't hear this one either. They dance to music and masks for a while before they kiss each other, and the infected waits till after before jump scaring through a rack of clothes. The infected tackles them both, and Riley temporarily passes out. Lucky for her, the infected ignores this easy target to go after Ellie. Ellie proves once again she can one-shot infected with a knife to the head more than any adult could. You would think kids raised in a world like this would be slightly more prepared for the infected, considering how easy it is to be infected. Now, Ellie and Riley are both shown to be bitten. A bitter pill for them. Two kids that just wanted to be kids and let their guards down, who just wanted to love. Both knowing it's over before any of that could begin. While Ellie survives due to her immunity, her anger, and their acceptance of what's to come as if they were suddenly adults crippled by the weight of the world is real and shows consequences for their innocent actions. All it takes is just one slip up and it's all lost. Riley may have died here, but Ellie's remaining childlike innocence went with her. Minus another sin. Ellie is able to find a needle and thread to suture Joel's wound and save him. Props to Ellie. Minus another sin. Ellie is desperately trying to nurse Joel back to health, but with nothing left to eat, she has to go out and hunt for food. While missing out on a rabbit, she is able to cleanly shoot a deer. Good on her for quietly setting up and executing the shot. Minus one sin. Earlier, Preacher David gave a sermon/eulogy to his group as he discussed diminishing rations. Lucky or unlucky for them, they stumble on their first deer in months. That just so happens to be the one that Ellie marked already. Minus another sin. At gunpoint, Ellie says she wants medicine for infections for half the deer, and David instructs James to retrieve it. While I would normally say,
"Ooh, how convenient!"
I do gotta appreciate Ellie's stance to procure everything she needs for Joel in one outing. Minus another sin. As a safety measure, Ellie goes up to both of their rifles on the ground and empties their chambers. Smart thinking, girl. Unload another sin. Ellie and David go to a nearby shelter to wait for James to return. In the meantime, David tries to convince Ellie to come back with him, as he says he found God after the apocalypse. He says a group of 4 from his flock went out for supplies, and one of them was killed by Joel, showing how everyone has a story and someone to come back home to, even if they seem like faceless evil out in the world. Everyone tries to survive in their own ways, even if it means the downfall of others. Minus another sin. James, aka OG Joel, has her at gunpoint, but is told to give her the medicine instead by David. She trails off without the venison, and they just let her go? They want revenge for the murder, but don't track her or follow her to find Joel's location immediately, especially since she is going off with penicillin, a commodity that must be hard to come by at this point, especially for a camp that is barely getting by. I'm no doctor, but that seems like a shit ton of medication for one dose. We cut back to David's flock as they are serving up mystery meat labeled as venison. As they bring in venison, it's obvious they are eating the body of the dead father Alec, and as heinous as it sounds, many people would resort to the same last resort to prevent starvation. It's another dark reality in this kind of world. Minus one sin. David has to address that they did indeed find Alec's killer, and that they will find them in the morning using tracks in the snow. What if it snows overnight though? That would get rid of the tracks. Wouldn't it have been easier to do it when she had just left instead of waiting until the next day. David pimp slaps the grieving daughter with no one batting an eye as David says he is her new daddy. Trust me, as creepy as that sounds, David is a creep, and it's pretty much a shining example of cults as they pray and eat after. This is how some people will be in the zombie apocalypse, minus another sin. Ellie goes outside to water her horse when she notices a flock of birds scattering in the distance. Good observation to see that something is approaching, minus one sin. David wants Ellie alive. Beta Joel says bringing Ellie back would just be another mouth to feed. I agree with Troy NFT Baker, but David just glares at him and everyone's fine with it. I get cult leaders have this kind of power dynamic over people, but if they are really scared that this girl will kill more people, I think they would do it anyway. Ellie tries to wake up the near comatose Joel and arms him with a hunting knife in case someone finds their way into his basement, minus another sin for Ellie looking out for her dad. Ellie on horseback somehow sneaks up behind them without making any noise, and instead of getting the drop on them, yells, "Hey motherfuckers!" and fires a warning shot. If you have the element of surprise, use it and get a clean kill. Alternate reality Joel is able to cut her off and shoot the horse pretty quickly. I don't get why they only had melee weapons before, but suddenly these guys have nothing but sniper rifles. If only they used that hunting skill and the ability to use guns like this before, maybe they would have had the advantage and would have been able to take out Joel. Evil Joel is about to execute the unconscious Ellie when David fires behind them. For these guys being so vengeful, I find it weird that all of them agree she should die and that this creepy ex-math teacher is able to intimidate them to not go through with it. David carries Ellie with two men dragging the dead horse home as another three search for live-action Joel. This guy is easily able to find the hiding spot, but if Joel, the guy that easily killed one of you, is out there, why would you split up like you're the Mystery Inc. and look for clues? It doesn't make sense. He killed one of you when you separated before. Why do it again? We get to see a Joel execution executed in live action again. For a guy straight out of a comatose, he sure is a badass in the shadows. Stab us in, baby. Joel knocks out one of the flock and leaves them alone as bait so he can ambush the other. Joel is really stealthy for someone who is recovering. Let's knock out another sin. Joel interrogates and tortures the two men by driving a knife in the kneecap of one of them and saying they both better point to the same area on the map so he can figure out where Ellie is. He then kills them both with this cold line at the end.
Daddy told you what you wanted. I ain't telling you shit.
It's okay.
No.
I believe him.
No.
Knowing someone is fearing for their life, he knows they would tell the truth so they could get out scot-free, but he can also not allow them to live since they were already hunting him before for revenge. So we're gonna minus another sin. Ellie awakens in a cage to see an ear across the hall. She knows they are eating people and that David's intentions with her and everyone else there are evil and vile. David tries to reason with her, telling her she is a natural-born leader, tough, and with a sense of violence that he himself has had even before the outbreak. David would use his new lifestyle in the zombie apocalypse to suit his needs of sexual and violent tendencies more so than he did as a teacher, and that is something many sick and twisted people would take advantage of in a zombie apocalypse. Minus another sin for shining light on the evils of humanity. David also reveals that he believes the cordyceps is a divine entity, not of evil intent, but fruitful gain that uses violence to ensure its own future. He draws a connection with the cordyceps fungus that almost wiped out all of humanity. Something to explain, something to give reason to all of this. Because as David says, everything happens for a reason. Minus one sin. David tries convincing Ellie she is a shepherd amongst sheep and that they could lead together, but in reality, he is only a wolf amongst sheep. And seeing right through that, she breaks the hand he offers her to deny his offering of faux peace. Despite the implication of chopping her into bits for a meal, she still fights back like a badass. -1 sin. Joel sneaks his way into the flock's camp to find Ellie's belongings, and soon finds the bodies of the people they have been eating. A gruesome sight. -1 sin. Although I am really surprised they don't have one single guy that knows about all this cannibalism standing guard here, since a majority of the camp doesn't even know that they are indeed eating human meat. You'd think they would want to keep someone posted there to keep that fact a secret. They get ready to chop Ellie up for dinner. I would say why not just shoot her so they would just skip past the whole killing her part to not risk anything, but David is the kind of sick bastard that would take pleasure from slowly killing a young girl. Which, for once, this does have a reason for a character to actually do something stupid and heinous because of their character traits, instead of the plot just demanding it. So we're gonna chop another sin. Ellie uses her bite wound to pretend she is indeed infected to stop them from killing her for a moment. During that hesitation, Ellie cleaves Troy Baker in the neck and gets away. A brilliant use of using your immunity in a tactical maneuver. -1 sin. Ellie grabs a burning piece of wood and chucks it at David. Within seconds, the building erupts in flames. Was this place just caked in David's greasy hair sweat for it to go up this quickly? You would think there would be more smoke, causing them to cough and stuff too. This spine-chilling game of cat and mouse where David tries to pretend he will be a father to Ellie as he sneaks around to try to get Ellie and she's sneaking around to attack him is the same awesome and dark tone as the game. -1 sin. Ellie gets a good stab in him before he knocks her to the ground and pins her down to reveal his true intentions. The fires of hell burning behind him as he attempts to have his way with her. The symbolism of false prophets and ultimately what they lead you to. Ellie having to chop him to bits in her panic state alone. Everything here is so indicative of what people will do and have to do to survive, and the symbolism of following those that will send you on the path straight to hell. -2 sins. Ellie, drenched in blood, runs outside in a panic as Joel grabs her to try and comfort her. Dealing with her trauma, he gets her to focus as the child that she still is mumbles and murmurs, afraid as she tries to get back to reality. The two survive, but broken mentally and physically. -1 sin. Although I do gotta say, this group of Davids had a few dozen people. You would think with how vengeful they are, and with the fire that would be causing tons of smoke, that some of them would see this, considering the steakhouse, the building they were in, is the central hub of their entire camp. So some people would have noticed it and come to its aid. I do gotta say though, after the previous big zombie show that I watched, being The Walking Dead, it was extremely refreshing for a story not to take 2.5 seasons to tell. -1 more sin as we enter the final episode. Flashing back to Ellie's birth, we see the voice actress for video game Ellie, Ashley Johnson, running from an infected into an abandoned house. The casting for Ellie to be her own pregnant mother in the live-action version is awesome, but I do have to wonder why a single infected is chasing a pregnant woman by herself while she is unarmed. The fact we actually get a decent explanation to Ellie's immunity being that her mom was bit right at birth and had the umbilical cord cut before full infection could take hold is really interesting, and a decent way to have an immune but rare case for an individual, since the circumstances of Ellie's birth are basically 1 in a million, or in this case 1 in a billion. Or a couple billion. No, we'll go with 1 in a couple billion. -1 sin. This is the last infected we will see in the first season of The Last of Us. And I know there will be a lot of people in my comment section saying there was barely any infected in the zombie show in the first place. God knows my Why You Wouldn't Survive was full of that. Now, I do have to address this because this is a big point of contention for a lot of zombie fans and people just watching a show for zombies. While the series is about the humans themselves, I do find that the infected encounters after the Kansas City attack to be pretty lackluster. As I previously discussed, we had the concept of the cordyceps being able to basically summon hordes through fungal networks, and in many cases, we only get one infected attacking at a time that does not lead to anything else. It feels weird that we got an explanation of a veritable hive mind, and yet in most cases, this feels like it was largely forgotten or just completely ignored. I know the infected are a side threat to the story's main element of the evils of humanity, and I love that trope in zombie media. It has been a constant staple, but I also want this unique concept of the fungi and how it works to be utilized a little more, as well as to up the stakes, to showcase the difference from the video games version of the cordyceps brain infection. Either way, I'm gonna have to add 2 cents because I wanted a little bit more of the zombies. Ellie's mom passes her baby off to Marlene in the hopes to raise her and then asks Marlene to kill her. I appreciate her doing the best she could do. Props to Mama Ellie, -1 cent. Ellie is distant because of her encounter with David, losing her talkative and positive outlook, while Joel finally comes full circle in trying to be a caring and dorky loving father that shares his interests and goofiness, both taking on personas the other one had beforehand and kind of switching up the dynamic, until they witness a herd of giraffes that bring the beauty of life and a joyful experience amidst their bloody journey together. The human side of them. The father watches over as the daughter enjoys life. One last look at a peaceful, familial life that both will struggle to ever have again from that day on. But for a faint glimpse, they could look out and say,
You can't deny that view.
-1 cent. Joel grows nervous about bringing Ellie to the Fireflies, just wanting her to be safe from the dangers of people and the infected, suggesting they should go back to Tommy's camp. After everything, Ellie wants to complete the journey they started together. While normally I'd say just go to safety and wrap things up, the rarity of Ellie's immunity would be cause to at least try and find something that could finally fight back against the cordyceps at the cellular level in some way. Either way, -1 cent for Ellie's commitment. Joel admits the scar on his head was from his own accord, admitting to attempting suicide after the death of his biological daughter. Because he flinched at the last second, the shot missed, and he kept on moving in life. Sometimes, amidst all the ideas of shooting zombies and games and all this preparation talk, we tend to forget the long-standing effects of losing loved ones right before our eyes. What can happen to others, and what that can do to our own psyche. We are all people that can lose the will, but we can persevere. And if you have those thoughts these days, let me just say, I know you can make it. Stay alive, stay strong, because you'll never know what good you can bring to the world if you just keep on going. It's okay to be human, and Joel was human. With my hammy speech aside, keep on keeping on. I know you can beat it. -1 cent. The Fireflies flashbang Joel and Ellie, although I don't understand why. Ellie is supposed to be this super precious cargo to them, and Joel has brought her all the way across the country. Why would you risk him freaking out and gunning anyone there down? They really don't know that Joel has created such a deep bond with Ellie at this point, and they still see Joel as this ruthless contract killer who could say in that commotion they caused that he wouldn't hold Ellie hostage or harm her. You're taking an awfully big risk for what they deem to be the cure for the cordyceps. Marlene tells Joel as he wakes up that Ellie's unique immunity to cordyceps can be used to create a way to basically trick the cordyceps into thinking a host is already infected, basically making them immune. However, the only way of harvesting this cellular makeup is through Ellie's brain, the only place cordyceps goes to grow fully in a human body. The surgery would kill her as it would take out a large portion of the gray matter in the process. A decent explanation to Ellie's immunity once again, and to Marlene's connection with Ellie, but her reliance on doing something for the greater good, meaning more than her love for Ellie and what that meant to her friend, who had to sacrifice her life for the baby. -1 cent. Joel is being escorted away until the surgery is complete, and he is able to single-handedly kill every single armed Firefly in the hospital, while in a video game the logistics sense of killing so many people is already hard to fathom as a single person, here it makes even less sense. I know the guy is a badass, but man, I'm gonna add 1 sin for every dead guy he shot down, especially since he sat there and stabbed a guy slowly before grabbing another gun, while others took shots that didn't even graze him. They had plenty of time to one-shot Joel, but he gets to cleanly kill them despite them having the tactical advantage. Look, I know it's a fictional series and you don't have to think of it as something realistic, just have fun, but this is Zombie Sins, okay? You clicked on the video and I get to be this way. It's my video and that's just how it's gonna be. That's what the point of Zombie Sins is for the logistic sense of survivors and zombies. So don't go in the comment section complaining at me about this, okay? Anyways, they come out one by one and it just doesn't make sense. You think they would be on him like, I don't know, fireflies on a light? I think that's a good analogy instead of flies on shit. So, in the words of James A. Janice, in the midst of my rant, let's get to the kills. 14 kills later, and Joel walks into the procedure room and the doctor and nurses are still prepping for surgery like nothing is happening outside. You would think one of the Fireflies would let them know, or there would be guards here, or the doctors would have left with Ellie already, considering the importance of their mission being the cure for the fungus that destroyed humanity, and they're still just casually preparing. Joel miraculously finds a working car with gas as soon as he descends the elevator and drives him and Ellie out. Very convenient. Ellie awakens and asks Joel what happened as he lies about killing Marlene and everyone else there. Joel's ruthlessness due to his PTSD of losing his loved ones and not wanting to lose his new daughter, getting so many killed and ruining the hope of a cure. While narratively it's a bittersweet thing that Joel does within his isolated familial experience, I have to side with Marlene on the realistic sense, and because it's Zombie Sins. You know, Ellie might be this good girl who deserves a right to life, and you know, when you think of it as a parent, you're protecting your child, but the potential in Ellie's sacrifice long term would mean potentially more in the grand scheme of things. But such is the way of each person's life experiences, trauma, and beliefs. Everything is wholly unpredictable and unfair in the world to someone. And with what is coming next in the story in season 2, that unfairness and unpredictable nature will come back to bite the both of them. Either way, minus another sin. And for the final sin of today, Joel is walking with Ellie back to Tommy's camp, and he promises that everything he had told her was true, that the Fireflies were killed by raiders and wiped out, but beforehand, they had told him there were plenty of immune people to draw samples from, and that a cure was found out to be impossible to make. A father telling an incredibly white lie to mask his daughter from the harsh reality of the world and his own actions. Joel is a father again, but at the cost of so much, and possibly the cost of potentially ending the zombie fungus that created The Last of Us. Minus one more sin.
Remaking the original game, and this is like a ground-up remake, is that right?
That's right. We wanted to give people the definitive version of the first game.
Do you ever look at someone and wonder what is going on inside their head?
Don't call me daughter, not fit to be.
Good Lord, what is happening in there?
Aurora Borealis?
Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your
television adaptation.
Yes.
May I see it?
No.
What is it, boy? Fire? Earthquake? Hippie? Zombies! Somehow the animals are always the first to know.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
It started out with a kiss, how did it end up like this?
Oh, stop. Oh, my dude, you just
It's just a prank, bro. I'm immortal.
There's nothing to be afraid of, Charlie. You're my friend.
Where are you going?
I have things to do.
What kind of things?
Things. Goodbye, Charlie.
This. All I did was save this kid's balloon from floating away, and he made me this.
Should have kept the balloon. That's a shit drawing.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
My brother.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
It was a day I'd not forget. The day that I first met my pet. Oh, what a lovely gift to get. I'd never felt so naughty.
I'm gay.